What started as a normal show at Blue Horizon Oceanic Park, the kind families paid good money to enjoy, suddenly turned into a nightmare. Neptune, the park's biggest star, an orca loved by the crowds, snapped without warning. He grabbed his trainer, Maris Ellington, and dragged her underwater with terrifying strength. Families, including kids, could only watch in shock as the magical show turned into chaos, ending in blood and tragedy. Blue Horizon Oceanic Park, tucked away in San Diego, California, was more than just another marine park. It was famous for its huge aquariums, hands-on dolphin programs, and colorful coral reef displays. But the real highlight, the main reason thousands of visitors came every week, was Neptune, a giant male orca, 20 feet long and weighing over 10,000 pounds. His shows were breathtaking, and people couldn't get enough. Neptune was the park's crown jewel, the one that brought in money and attention. He put on 6 shows a week, each one full of energy and excitement, keeping Blue Horizon at the top of must-see attractions. But behind all the lights and cheers, things weren't so perfect. Trainers had started noticing changes. Neptune sometimes acted out, slapping his tail against the tank walls, ignoring commands, and showing signs of frustration. Even with these warnings, park management refused to stop the shows. They argued that Neptune was too important for business. Maris Ellington, just 27 years old, was Neptune's main trainer. She had worked hard to earn that spot. Growing up on Oregon's rugged coast, she had always loved the ocean and its creatures. After finishing her degree in marine biology, she joined Blue Horizon, quickly gaining respect for her dedication and care. She was proud of her bond with Neptune and often brushed off concerns, believing she could handle him. But not everyone felt the same. Months earlier, a senior trainer had raised the alarm, worried about Neptune's growing aggression and how isolated he was becoming. That trainer pushed for Neptune to be taken out of performances or retired completely. Management refused. The trainer, unwilling to risk it anymore, quit in protest. Their warnings would later become an important part of the story after everything went wrong. By the time the afternoon show came around, Maris had already done one performance earlier that day without trouble. Now, the stands were filling up again with excited families and kids, waiting for Neptune's huge jumps and dazzling tricks. Even though Neptune had been unpredictable in recent months, Maris was calm and confident. She told her coworkers she thought he was in a good mood that day. The trainers quickly went over their signals and safety steps one last time, though everyone felt a slight tension in the air. Then, as the music boomed and the announcer welcomed the audience, the show began. Neptune slid into the tank with his usual grace, instantly earning cheers from the crowd of about 500 people. The show began smoothly, with Maris guiding him through the opening routines. The audience erupted in applause when Neptune leapt high into the air, crashing back down with a splash that drenched the front rows. For a while, it felt like Neptune was his old self again. The big finale was coming, a synchronized swim between him and Maris, designed to show off their bond and his agility. As Maris slipped into the water, Neptune circled her, his massive black and white body gliding effortlessly through the clear tank. She gave the signal for him to leap beside her. At first, it seemed like he would follow, but then, without warning, Neptune swerved. In a sudden, terrifying move, he lunged at Maris, clamping his powerful jaws around her midsection. The force of the attack lifted her head briefly above the water, where she heard the audience screaming in horror before Neptune yanked her back under. Trainers on the platform jumped into action, scrambling to distract the orca. They tossed brightly colored buoys and ropes into the tank, followed by a bucket of fish, hoping to pull his focus away. 2 trainers grabbed long poles meant to push Neptune back, but his violent thrashing made it too dangerous to get close. As Neptune slammed Maris against the tank walls, her limp body broke the surface again, only to be dragged under moments later. The crowd was frozen in shock. Some parents shielded their kids' eyes, while others sat motionless, unable to believe what they were witnessing. After more than a minute of thrashing, Neptune finally let go. Maris floated lifeless on the surface. Within seconds, Rescue divers rushed into the water and pulled her onto the deck, where medics fought desperately to bring her back. But her injuries were devastating: broken ribs, a punctured lung, and severe trauma to her chest and stomach. Despite their efforts, Maris was pronounced dead at the scene. The aftermath was chaos. Guests were rushed out of the park while emergency teams arrived, and the amphitheater was sealed off. Within hours, Blue Horizon announced all Orca shows would be suspended, a decision that later became permanent. The tragedy triggered serious legal fallout for the park. Heartbroken over losing their only child, Maris's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit, accusing Blue Horizon of negligence for ignoring repeated warnings about Neptune's aggression and the dangers of keeping him in isolation. The lawsuit also pointed to weak safety measures and management's choice to keep the shows running despite the risks. The case never went to trial. After long negotiations, Blue Horizon reached a large settlement with Maris's family. Though the exact details stayed private, the settlement showed the park was taking responsibility while trying to protect its reputation. As part of the agreement, Blue Horizon also promised to support marine conservation programs and fund independent research into the mental health of captive orcas, a step toward addressing bigger concerns. The tragedy shook the entire marine park industry, sparking fierce debates about the ethics of keeping orcas in captivity. Blue Horizon permanently ended its orca shows, but the park kept other attractions like dolphin encounters, aquariums, and conservation exhibits. Still, losing its main star caused visitor numbers to drop, and money troubles began piling up. Within just a few years, the park went bankrupt and shut down for good. Neptune was moved to a marine sanctuary in British Columbia, where he could live in a more natural environment. For Maris's family, though, the loss was permanent, a painful reminder of the dangers that come with working so closely with such powerful wild animals. Orca accidents have caught worldwide attention, often happening at big-name marine parks across the U.S., a country famous for its glitzy entertainment and spectacular shows. But tragedies like this don't only happen in America. In Tenerife, Spain, another chilling incident with an orca forever changed the life of 9-year-old marine biologist Claudia Volhart. Loro Parque, perched along the rugged coastline of Puerto de la Cruz in Tenerife, is one of the world's most famous animal parks, known for housing some of nature's most incredible creatures. Spread across 135,000 square meters of lush landscapes and vivid habitats, it draws millions of visitors every year. It first started as a sanctuary for parrots, but eventually grew into something much bigger, home to dolphins, penguins, and, most famously, orcas in its celebrated Orca Ocean exhibit. The early 2000s marked a major turning point for Loro Parque as it expanded into marine life, turning the park into a hotspot for thrill-seekers and animal lovers alike. The highlight was, of course, the Orca show's stunning performances full of power, intelligence, and beauty. Crowds gasped as the massive whales soared into the air, their tails sending waves of water crashing into the cheering audience. Yet behind all the excitement, a quieter and far more complicated reality lingered. One of the stars of these shows was Tekoa, a 6-year-old male orca weighing over 1,500 kilograms. His size and strength impressed audiences, but to the trainers who worked with him daily, Tekoa's life was much more complicated. Trainers like Claudia spent years building trust with him, learning to read the smallest signals: a flick of his tail, a tilt of his giant head, subtle clues to his mood. But orcas are still wild animals. Their instincts and emotions can be impossible to fully understand. Tekoa had shown flashes of aggression before, but they were brief and never seemed dangerous enough to raise serious alarms. Until now. No one could have imagined how quickly things would change. Beneath the perfect-looking shows was an unspoken truth. Even the best trainers could only guess what was really happening in Tekoa's mind. And sometimes, the sparkling waters of Orca Ocean could hide the darkest depths. Tekoa's early life had already been filled with turmoil. Only a few months after his birth, he was separated from his mother Taima because of her growing aggression, the same behavior she had shown with earlier calves. Many believe this came from her own trauma, having once witnessed her mother, Gudrun, try to drown a disabled calf. After being separated, Tekoa was raised by Kalina, a more experienced female orca, and was often paired with his half-brother Tuar. Their bond became one of the few steady, comforting parts of Tekoa's troubled childhood. In 2004, Tekoa and his half-brother Tuar were moved to SeaWorld San Antonio, where they joined a new group of orcas. Life there, and later at Loro Parque, only made things harder for Tekoa. He often faced aggression from the other whales, leaving him with scars from countless clashes. Over time, he grew into a strong but unpredictable animal, his difficult past shaping the aggression he would later show toward trainers.
One of those trainers was Claudia Volhart, a 9-year-old marine biologist from Weinheim, Germany. For her, working with orcas wasn't just a job, it was a dream. She was Europe's only female orca trainer, and she had dedicated years of her life at Loro Parque to bonding with animals most people would only ever see from a distance. Before becoming a marine biologist, Claudia had worked as a model, but she left the fashion world behind for the ocean, believing it was her true calling. Through passion and persistence, she earned her place at the park. With Tekoa especially, she felt a deep, almost spiritual connection. But on this day, as she prepared for another training session, something felt different. There was an uneasy tension in the air. It was supposed to be a normal session. Claudia stood at the edge of the pool, waiting for Tekoa's signal. His huge body cut smoothly through the water, his dorsal fin slicing across the surface. He swam toward her calmly, almost as if to say everything was fine. The exercise was simple. Tekoa was supposed to nudge Claudia's feet with his snout while they swam together. A routine meant to show their trust and synchronization. Claudia stretched out, her movements smooth and practiced, her hand brushing the cold, glassy surface of the water. Tekoa surged forward, but something was wrong. His movements weren't graceful this time. They were forceful. Before she could react, his snout rammed into her chest, knocking the breath out of her lungs. The impact sent her crashing against the water with bone-shaking force. She barely had a moment to recover before Tekoa struck again, his massive body slamming into her and dragging her beneath the surface. Claudia's arms thrashed as she tried to regain control, but everything was a blur of cold, crushing water. Then she felt it the pull, not gentle, but raw and overpowering. Tekoa's sheer strength yanked her deeper, his teeth grazing her arm as he dragged her toward the darkest part of the pool 40 feet down. The deeper they went, the more the pressure crushed her chest, stealing what little breath she had left. Claudia's vision dimmed, the rushing sound of water filling her ears. Then came the bite. Tekoa's teeth clamped tightly around her arm. The pain was sharp, unlike anything she had ever felt. She fought to break free, kicking desperately, but his grip was unshakable. Time slowed. Seconds stretched into what felt like forever. Then, suddenly, the pulling stopped. Tekoa released his dive and shot upward. His teeth were still locked on her arm as his powerful muscles carried them both back to the surface. Claudia broke through the water, gasping desperately for air. The cold air hit her face as she struggled to stay conscious. The world around her came back into focus, but the searing pain in her arm and chest was unbearable. She tried to scream, but only a weak gasp escaped her lips. Her colleagues, watching from the poolside, realized what was happening. Without hesitation, they rushed forward, pulling her out of the water and away from Tekoa's grip. Claudia's body was limp, her chest rising and falling heavily as they dragged her to safety. She could hardly process what had just happened. An attack. That's what it was, sudden, brutal, and so fast that even she struggled to believe it. The trainers worked frantically, and within minutes, Claudia was rushed to the hospital. Against all odds, she survived, but her injuries were serious: a broken elbow, a bruised lung, and severe internal damage. As doctors fought to stabilize her, it became clear that her physical wounds were only part of the battle. The mental scars would last much longer than the bruises. Back at Loro Parque, the reality began to sink in. Tekoa had always been powerful, but no one thought he would strike with such violence. His earlier behaviors were brushed off as quirks, never true threats. Now, the danger was undeniable. Management quickly decided that trainers would no longer enter the water with Tekoa. The choice was made in haste. But it was also an unspoken admission of just how dangerous working with orcas could be. For Claudia, recovery was slow and painful. The attack left lasting scars, both physical and emotional. For the park, things would never be the same. Trainers no longer swam with Tekoa, and the once thrilling shows now carried a shadow of sadness. Meanwhile, the voices questioning the ethics of captivity grew louder. Tekoa's attack had become a harsh reminder that even trained wild animals remain unpredictable, making the illusion of control seem fragile at best. Claudia's story shocked the world. But in truth, the deepest victims were the orcas themselves, creatures forced into captivity, stripped of freedom, their natural instincts suppressed. Trainers chose this life, the orcas did not. Our next story turns to Can-Do, an orca whose life revealed the heartbreaking reality of captivity. Can-Do's story began in 1977 when she was captured off the coast of Iceland as a calf. Like many others, her capture was brutal and traumatic. Orcas are known for their strong family bonds, but Can-Do was torn from hers in a violent separation. A team tracked her pod using aircraft, while boats closed in, surrounding the whales and driving them into a smaller area. Nets were thrown in, separating Can-Do from her family. She was lifted out in a net, transported by boat, and carried into a life she never chose captivity. Her captors named her Can-Do, a name taken from indigenous Salish culture, where orcas hold great cultural meaning. Can-Do was first sent to Marine World Africa USA in California, then moved to Six Flags Over Georgia and later to Ontario Place Marine in Toronto. At the time, orcas were often shuffled between parks, treated like business assets rather than living beings. Eventually, she was sent to SeaWorld San Diego, where she became one of its star performers. To the crowds, Can-Do was the picture of orca brilliance, strong, intelligent, and graceful. She performed dazzling flips, soaring jumps, and synchronized routines alongside the other orcas. But behind the applause, her life in captivity was filled with struggle. The tanks were small, the routines unnatural, and the constant transfers between parks took their toll. Many captive orcas, like Can-Do, showed signs of stress and frustration behaviors that came directly from living in confinement, far from the open ocean they were meant to roam. Even so, Can-Do bonded with her trainers and learned quickly, her body cutting through the water with beauty and power that amazed audiences. But the struggles beneath the surface never truly went away. Can-Do's bond with her trainers, while important for the shows, couldn't hide the growing unrest inside her. The small tanks, lack of freedom, and the loss of her family were taking a heavy toll. Her distress became clear after the birth of her first calf in 1986. That calf, named Winston, was stillborn. The loss devastated Can-Do. She kept performing, but she was visibly shaken, and her behavior grew unpredictable. A year later, she gave birth again, this time to a female calf named Orchid. Can-Do immediately bonded with Orchid. But tension with the other orcas, especially Corky, began to rise. Can-Do's protective instincts over Orchid made her more aggressive and territorial. By the 21st of August, her aggression had reached a breaking point. That day's show was supposed to feature Can-Do and Corky performing together. But as the crowd watched, Can-Do's behavior turned erratic. Corky's closeness to Orchid made her restless, and she began showing dominance behaviors. In the wild, orcas managed these social struggles in open pods with space to escape. But in captivity, those instincts clashed against concrete walls. The performance, meant to inspire awe, turned into a frightening display of aggression. Can-Do tried to assert dominance with raking, scraping Corky with her teeth, just like wild orcas sometimes do to establish hierarchy. But Can-Do misjudged. Corky was bigger, heavier, and more experienced. When Can-Do lunged, she missed her target and smashed headfirst into the pool wall with enormous force. The crack echoed through the arena, silencing the crowd. Can-Do's jaw was shattered and an artery burst. Blood gushed from her blowhole, horrifying the audience. SeaWorld staff rushed to act. The orcas were pulled from the stage. The crowd quickly evacuated, and Candu was moved to a back pool with Orca by her side. But her injuries were fatal. Despite desperate efforts, she lost too much blood. After 45 agonizing minutes, Candu died. In her final moments, she stayed close to Orca, as though still trying to comfort and protect her. Her life ended tragically in the very place where she had once been celebrated, leaving behind a haunting story of both love and loss. Candu's death became a turning point for SeaWorld and animal entertainment as a whole. It raised questions that lingered for years. Was it just a tragic accident, or was it the inevitable result of captivity? After the incident, it came out that Candu had shown aggression before snapping at trainers, lashing out at other orcas' behaviors rarely seen in the wild. On the 4th of March, 1987, she was even filmed slamming into a trainer and dragging him to the bottom of the pool, an early warning sign that something was very wrong. Even so, after her death, SeaWorld continued its orca shows. They insisted their animals were well cared for, with vets and trainers ensuring their health. But Candu's story became one of many that revealed the emotional and physical damage captivity caused. Our Orca series has uncovered countless such incidents, reminding us why these incredible animals do not belong in tanks. One of the most infamous examples is Shamu, whose story ended in violence and tragedy. It was 1971, and Shamu, then a 9-year-old orca, was performing for an eager crowd at SeaWorld. Families and children cheered as she swam and performed tricks with grace and power. For years, the name Shamu had symbolized wonder and joy, a living ambassador of the ocean's beauty. But that day, everything changed. Shamu's life had already been filled with trauma. She was captured violently in 1965 from Puget Sound by Ted Griffin, a man infamous for his brutal orca hunts. During the capture, her mother tried desperately to protect her. Harpoons struck her, leaving her bleeding and sinking into the sea, while Shamu was ripped away. The scars of that day never healed. Sold to SeaWorld, Shamu was put on display in a new San Diego park that promised to celebrate the ocean's beauty but only for human enjoyment. For Shamu, it was a prison. The tank was tiny, just 20 by 30 feet, far too small for her 1,700-pound body. The endless ocean she once roamed was replaced by hard concrete walls. Her life became one of forced performances, leaping, spinning, and obeying commands that went against every instinct. Though she followed orders, the emotional and physical toll was clear. The shows went on, the crowds cheered, but Shamu's spirit broke. By 1971, SeaWorld was expanding fast, opening new parks in Florida and Texas. Demand for orcas grew, and more wild whales were captured. But behind the booming empire, Shamu's suffering grew worse. On the 19th of April, 1971, SeaWorld staff came up with a stunt to promote the shows. They wanted to prove how safe orcas were by having someone ride Shamu in front of an audience. Anna Eckes, a secretary at SeaWorld and trained diver, volunteered for the publicity stunt. At first, it went smoothly. Shamu swam calmly. Anna climbed onto her back, and she waved proudly at the crowd. But Shamu didn't trust strangers the way she trusted her trainers. Years of trauma and stress boiled over. Without warning, Shamu threw Anna into the water. Panic erupted. Before Anna could react, Shamu clamped her powerful jaws around Anna's leg and dragged her under. The audience screamed as blood clouded the water. Trainers rushed in, diving to pry Anna free. One of them forced Shamu's jaws open, finally pulling Anna to safety. Her leg was torn and bleeding, but she survived. She was rushed to the hospital and later sued SeaWorld for negligence, fraud, and the danger of forcing wild animals into captivity. She won $17,500 in damages, but no amount of money could erase the trauma. For Shamu, things only got worse. Retired from performing, she was left isolated in her tank. The lack of stimulation and the constant stress broke her health. By the end of 1971, she developed a severe uterine infection that doctors couldn't treat. Shamu died at only 9 years old. In the wild, orcas can live up to 80 years. Her short, painful life became a grim reminder of the true cost of captivity. SeaWorld's image suffered, but the shows continued. Another orca, Helena, was brought in to take Shamu's place. But Shamu's tragic story stayed in the shadows, proof that while audiences were dazzled by the shows, the orcas themselves paid the highest price. Thank you for joining us as we uncovered the unpredictable and terrifying power of orcas, a chilling reminder of the hidden dangers beneath their beauty. If you love true stories like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss one. Don't forget to like this video, share it with friends, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you.